Hey, everybody. Kevin Harnett, Ryan Hoke here. Hope you're having a good evening. I tell you, after what happened yesterday, so many folks cleaning up today in the path of that tornado, a number of them. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to look back to 1974. I had a chance to sit down and talk with Tom Wills.
Yes, it's always good to see Tom, and Tom has a lot of stories and insight from that day that you're not
from any day,
right? That you're not going to hear anywhere else. I always say Tom has the best weather nuggets, the little weather pieces of info from an event or an atmospheric phenomenon that you'd want to know. So we'll hear from him here.
Yeah, for folks that are just now jumping in, Tom was a longtime meteorologist here, worked here for 40 years, and we'll hear from him. We also are talking about the eclipse, which is now the next big event that we'll have on our calendars coming up in just 4 days.
We've been waiting for what, like 6 years for this now? I mean, ever since the 2017 eclipse ended, we started planning for this one.
All right. Well, let's just jump into it because we've got a lot to get to. Don't want to hold everybody up. Feel free to chime in. I see some of you watching from Cloverport. Some people asking about eclipse glasses. We're going to get into all of this as we roll along. 43-degree temperatures, a far cry from where we were at this time yesterday. We had warm temperatures all week long. Boy, the cold front, we felt it move through, and we've got a secondary front pushing past today. We've had areas or pockets of light rain that have been falling, and in those rain showers, believe it or not, we've had some convection.
Yeah, that means a little hail or a little graupel has been falling there, and that isn't... I have a bug in my throat all of a sudden. I'm all choked up.
I'll give you some water, but I don't even have any.
I know. I don't have any in here either. I'll be okay. But on the storm reports here from MPing, which is a separate app you can download from University of Oklahoma National Weather Service here. And when those reports get plotted on the map here, we can see the different precipitation types that folks have reported. And you'll see that sleet, snow, and a little bit of rain have all been reported. But in reality, it's probably a bit more hail. And a lot of folks have been chiming in with those pea-size hail reports too. So it may look like sleet, but it's probably more hail because it's a convective process today, meaning that these raindrops are being lofted high into the air and it's creating hail instead of sleet, which requires some of the refreezing layers below the layer of the cloud, which you just don't have today.
And I tell you, it's so helpful to have your reports. So these MPing reports are important, both for precip types, especially we're in the winter months, but also for hail and hail size reports, because we can plot those immediately on the maps. Yesterday, we didn't have a whole lot of hail. Oftentimes in severe weather coverage, we do. And boy, to know the size of that hail and the exact location is super important. So if you want to do us a favor and help out during storms, this is a great way to do it. You can notice the storm reports over the last 36 hours. This takes us back through yesterday's event. You'll notice the hail reports. We did have a few. We also had a lot of wind reports and a few tornado reports in there as well. So that's what we're going to first start with, will be the tornadoes of yesterday. Then we'll get into the 74, then the eclipse. We'll be taking your questions toward the end here. Let's start by saying that you're looking at the map. We had 100-mile-plus-per-hour winds across parts of Clark County, as well as over into Oldham County, northeast Jefferson County. We have video of what that looked like as well. We can show you what that looked like across parts of Jeffersonville, Indiana, from high above. The drone showing that in a couple of subdivisions over there, those winds as high as 100 miles per hour, ripping roofs off, certainly tearing the shingles back, and in some cases the plywood.
Right, and you can see that this level of damage here, of course, caused a lot of folks to have to pick up the pieces today. We're missing like sides of roofs, we're missing whole roofs, windows were shattered, and we can go to another piece of footage here shot by the Chicago Midwest Storm Chasers. We got this from NBC. This is up in the Watson area there of Clark County, just east of I-65. They're right along Indiana 265. And boy, I mean, look at all of that debris right there. This is going to take some time for folks to clean up. Also, will take some time for the National Weather Service to complete their damage assessment of this. We have that preliminary EF1 rating, but over the coming days here, we will likely see additional info when it comes to, just how fast those winds were and if they're going to upgrade that to a 2 or higher here.
And again, you see it split at the Ohio, but obviously that was one track of a tornado. So these numbers will, again, mesh up and come back to us from the Weather Service once they finish their surveys. Over toward Jericho, this is in Henry County, not far from Newcastle. You had damage too. These were the strongest winds we had at that point. Those were running at about 110 miles per hour. And we've seen video coming out of the Jericho area too, where, again, homes obliterated by the high winds that certainly had some damage that came in with many of those. We started the day yesterday with storms across parts of Kentucky, and that was an EF1 tornado that touched down in the morning hours down in northeast Nelson County, and that would have been toward the Chaplin area, not too far from Bloomfield.
Yeah, just east of Bloomfield, in fact. So we had 2 rounds of storms yesterday. Both rounds produced tornadoes, and we should underscore how rare that is, by the way, to have both a morning and an afternoon round like that both were severe, both put down tornado damage like that. Often when you have a morning round, the afternoon round isn't as intense. But yesterday, the dynamics and of course, the moisture flow were such that the atmosphere could recover very quickly. So let's switch gears from yesterday to today. And this is where we saw the hail and the grapple photos from folks who sent in their photos on the Wave Weather app. You just tap that Submit Your Photos button, and we can show these things not only here on our live stream, but on TV too.
Yeah, and boy, it was kind of wild. People were like, man, what's the weather going to do? It's so windy. Then the sun would pop out. Then we'd see the hail. Then we'd see the grapple, and people didn't know what was going on.
And that's convection. Seeing the sun, then it gets really cloudy. Seeing the sun again, the sun's literally recharging these little showers that move through West Baden Springs there from Debbie. You see some of that hail there. Lebanon, Kentucky, Amanda, seeing some of that kind of accumulate on the window. It was just melting there. And it will be windy as we go throughout tomorrow because we've got this set up again.
Well, and it's going to be wet too at times. We've got more rain, possibly a few snow showers mixing in overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning. It's going to be a worse feeling day than today because it's cooler and it's likely a little bit wetter than today, especially through the afternoon hours. And notice the peak timing for the rain during the peak heating of the day. So that's what we'll be noticing on the maps for tomorrow. I'll show you what that looks like on the Futurecast, just scattered in the morning. And then in the afternoon with that heating, we see the shield of light rain pushing through. This is nothing severe at all for tomorrow, though we could see a few more areas of grapple or those snow showers during the morning hours. So that sort of takes us back. We've sort of condensed what happened with the storm surveys. We know we've had at least 6 tornadoes across the Commonwealth being confirmed, several of those right here in our area, including the southern Clark County, Oldham County, and then over into Henry County.
And I should say, Ron Steve at the National Weather Service did say today that there likely was a tornado in Harrison County. They're still doing the survey there, but they basically said we're starting to lop that into our count here. So once we get that official information, we'll give that to you. But that's something that a little later today he did say.
You know, we're no strangers to tornadoes. We've both chased storms. In fact, we've chased storms together out in the plains before, but we've never been in a tornado.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing. We've been as close as about a football field and a half, 150 yards. That was close enough for me. That was intense.
That was in southeast Colorado, May 31st, Campo. 2010. Campo was the official name of the town nearby. But getting inside of a tornado is a different thing entirely here. And we have some video from yesterday here that we're going to put on the screen here. This is dash cam footage here. This is Indiana 265 at International Drive. The name of the driver here was Ethan, or was it Ethan? It was
Ethan Williams.
Ethan Williams. There we go.
So here he is pulling up toward the overpass. 265, by the way, the Lee Hamilton. He could easily hook on and go to Louisville here. Cars are stopped, flashers are on. Obviously, you see some debris in the sky. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't really want to be there, so he shoots up the far right-hand side.
With 2 kids in the back seat, he's trying to escape this thing and finds himself in the middle of it. Watch the traffic lights, the 2 far traffic lights in the center of the screen. 3, 2, 1, boom. They get ripped off by this tornado, and he starts to get rotated. Notice his windshield wipers have stopped, and debris starts to hit his windshield. Again, 2 kids are in the back. He's in a Ford F-150, and he
said they ducked down below the windows just in case something happened. The car beside him was blown over.
And you're going to see that here at the very end of this video. Once this tornado passes, Ethan will regain control of the vehicle. He'll turn around, and you're going to see this small subcompact car with its roof touching the ground, which is never a good thing. Again, this is International Drive at 265 there in eastern Clark County, just before you get to where you go to the Lewis and Clark Bridge to go over to Louisville. And here we go. He starts to turn his vehicle here.
Now, can you imagine he's got to be getting up thinking like, okay, well, my truck is okay.
And then you see this right here. Look at that. That's insanity.
Oh, that was one of several. I mean, that was one
Yes.
car flipped over. We had at least 4 semis tumped over as well.
We showed you that on Wave News yesterday, of course, as it was happening from the Indiana Department of Transportation cameras, seeing all those turned over semis. It's a miracle that we had no fatalities that we know of at this time from those storms in our area yesterday.
Now,
10 injuries.
I hope the same person is in the chat today that was saying we were hyping everything up, because I'd like to see them back in here. I bet they're not. And if they are, they're not going to admit to it. But the fact is, we're not sitting around hyping stuff up. This is just the way the weather works. Now, we have a lot more technology at our fingertips now than what they had back 50 years ago, obviously. When you think back 50 years ago, there was a huge, massive tornado outbreak. This was 148 tornadoes across a number of states. At the time, before we hit, 2012, it was the largest tornado outbreak that had ever hit the United States.
Yes, this was a generational tornado outbreak. Today is the 50th anniversary of it. It was April 3rd for our area, but actually did extend to April 4th in areas to our east there. And, we have a lot of history here at Wave with this tornado outbreak with Tom Wills and, of course, all of his coverage of it. And Kevin's been digging through some of our archives in our basement here and in our weather office.
Well, I knew where most of this stuff was because I had seen it before, but let me show you. Ted Fujita had sent this to the station. It still had the mark from the University of Chicago and his address on the envelope. But what happened, as Tom was explaining, was as he was researching this event, which eventually led to the Fujita scale, Wave and its viewers were a big part in the research, because what Dr. Fujita needed at the time was pictures and video. He was trying to determine how one tornado would have come through the city like this. And what he found was that there were multiple vortices.
Multi-vortex tornado.
Vortices along the outer edge of that. And in fact, when you think back to that day, Brandenburg had the highest wind outside of Xenia, Ohio. And consequently, if you looked at the front page of the Meade County Messenger back then, which was just 15 cents, you can see what that looked like. And this is dated on the 11th. So just days later, when that paper came out, 30 die in disaster tornado strikes. That was originally rated an F6 tornado.
Which I never knew until this year, that the rating scale that Dr. Ted Fujita came up with, yes, he didn't stop at F5, which is what we would later know the scale to be, F0 through F5, and now it's EF0 through EF5 because of what they did in 2007 to it, to adjust some of those wind ratings. But it's incredible that all kind of got lost in the history of it. And now we're kind of resurrecting it here on the 50th anniversary so that we don't forget what happened.
Well, we think back to, just this event that we had happen and how warnings have sort of come into play and the technology. Yesterday when we were tracking storms across the area, we were trying to stay ahead of the warnings. And that's so important because, sometimes when the warning's issued, you have no time. So for folks that are in Southern Clark County and Oldham County, I want you to know we were watching you. Let me show you this clip of what it looked like yesterday as we were tracking those storms across the area. Jefferson County. So again, that is the tornadic storm. We see the rotation on the radar. No confirmation at this point. It's radar indicated, but nonetheless, you should take it seriously, get in that tornado safe place as it moves off to the north and east. Severe weather. And just prior to that, and sorry, the video started just a little late there. We were mentioning before that warning had come out that I wouldn't be surprised to see a tornado warning for southern parts of Clark County and Jefferson County, and that's where it went, right into that area. And you can see the radar. Inside the radar, we can see the velocities, we can see the debris. So we were starting to see all of that yesterday. It just goes to show that the technology has come so far. When I sat down and talked to Tom about the changes in the business and especially in technology, I asked him to just sort of walk us through what it was like to be here and in his shoes on April the 3rd, 1974. This is going to be about 3 to 4 minutes long, but take a listen to Tom.
April 1st, I used in those days to be able to get home for dinner and back. And I told my wife I won't be home Wednesday. I said I just knew that something was, it's just perfect situation setting up. To be truthful about it, I had no idea it would be, what it was. I mean, it just looked like it was a day favorable for tornadoes.
I seen a big funnel cloud.
To have 148 of them in 24 hours was something you just could not imagine.
Talk about what it was like in this building 50 years ago on that day.
Doing weather, I mean, it was nonstop. I mean, we knew we're dealing with something big here. That earlier in the 2 to 4 time frame, there was a line of one of these supercells or line of supercells that moved across southern Indiana. Probably did its worst damage in Hanover. The college was pretty much ripped up. Then everything's shifted south, maybe 100 miles south. So we got a warning out for Brandenburg real quick. And then when Brandenburg got wiped out, we knew that storm was obviously very, very damaging. Many, many reports from Brandenburg of people, quote, seeing the bottom of the Ohio River. That storm went across the river, sucked up so much water, and then it went about 100 yards into Indiana, and there's no trace of damage after that. It just, well, I think the water got in there and just stopped it. But then it put down another tornado, starting about Iroquois Park. But the touchdown was basically at the fairgrounds with the horse barns.
Oh, it sounded terrible. I don't know how to explain it even. Sounded like it just exploded.
And then over to Audubon Park and Cherokee Park and up into the East End, North Hills and that area. Then finally, the last trace of it was a few miles into Oldham County. One time I was passing through the newsroom on the way back, and well, actually, weather office was attached to the newsroom, so I was just passing through, and I heard one of our reporters reporting in what he was seeing, and he said, "It's gone." And they said, "What do you mean it's gone? What's gone?" "It's gone." "What do you mean it's gone?" "The park, it's gone." I was kind of like a bystander. Nature was doing all these things. There's nothing we could do about it. So I don't really think until the line had passed us, the whole thing was settled down. It never really hit me entirely until I saw the damage, which was about midnight that night going home, trying to get home, but there's a lot of interstate highway closures because tree limbs and what have you were on them. So, but yeah, by then you could see how widespread it was and how bad it was. I mean, it's just sickening, basically. It was like the weather did this. I love the weather, I still do. But, sometimes the weather does bad things, and it's just unimaginable to me. It was just freakish. It was living in kind of like a daze for several days.
When you think of that day today, how does it make you feel?
I still feel bad. I mean, I'm here doing the weather in this town. I'm supposed to be able to help people, but there was nothing anybody could have done about that. But I still feel bad about it. So it's just the way I feel. I feel sad. So for what happened to us.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. If you're working in the weather enterprise and you're trying to keep people safe and you have tornadoes and they wind up taking lives, especially anything like 1974, just has to sadden you. I have our transmitter log here. This was from Wave TV on that very date. And on the back, you can see as the engineers keep track of the transmitter and its signal, the information that was coming in across the emergency broadcast signal. And it shows the weather warnings that came out for that day. So just sort of a sobering reminder for us that it can happen. And we keep this in our weather office along with the other pieces that we have here from that day. We know a lot of people were affected by that day, not just because of these tracks that you see on the map. And it wasn't just here. I mean, it was those 148 tornadoes across states from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Deep South.
Yeah, 319 fatalities. And we wouldn't see something that bad until April 27th, 2011, when you have a 200-plus fatality event down near Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and other places there. I drove through some of the supercells that constituted that tornado outbreak, trying to get back home to Louisville after a final exam, differential equations to be exact there.
Yeah, that's a fun class.
Yeah, that was a bad day. April 27th.
Want to see everybody leave right away? Let's crank out the formulas.
It was the last day of final exams there. But yeah, that 1974 tornado outbreak we call that a generational event. We've color coded it by all the different strengths of the tornadoes as they were rated. There was a lot of post analysis on this. Things were adjusted in the decades past here. And now here we are 50 years later. And the world has changed completely when it comes to the weather enterprise and how we cover tornadoes and tornado warnings these days. And how you receive the warning has been transformed by this little device that just about everybody has in their hands.
Well, that's been the biggest thing is the communication. You no longer have to just be in front of the TV.
No.
It can come to you, and that's a huge help with emergency weather. All right. Well, we've covered a number of things. We're going to talk about the eclipse here. Great American Eclipse. We're excited about this. We've been excited for years now, and we sort of have our plan in place. So we'll go through that with you. We're going to take you through the path of that eclipse. We'll give you the forecast. That's important about the eclipse. We've talked about sort of the weather that's happened today, the surveys that were underway. We talked about all of those storms from yesterday, 1974. Now it's time to get into the Great American Eclipse. And with that, how close are we? Well, we're getting close. We're just 4 days away. So totality at just after 3 o'clock. That total solar eclipse happens quite frequently, believe it or not.
It does.
It just because much of the earth is filled with water.
70% of it.
We're just not able to see it in totality very often.
So they often have like eclipse cruises or eclipse flights where you can see like an eclipse over like the vast Pacific Ocean. But for it to actually happen in some of our counties, that's a big deal. And that could be a once in a lifetime event.
Just say you were eclipsed on a cruise?
That sounds like something. I don't even want to know what that is.
Sounds kind of fun, really. Whatever. All right, let's talk about how the eclipse works.
So an eclipse, a solar eclipse to be exact here, is pretty simple. It's when the shadow of the moon is cast upon the earth and you experience total darkness in the place where that happens. And by the way, this is super rare even in the universe to happen because the shadow of the moon is so perfect. The distance of the moon from the earth is so perfect that we get that perfect shadow that does not happen in most solar systems across the galaxy here. And it casts actually 2 shadows.
Well, the one of total darkness, which is the one you want to be in, we call that the umbra because that's just where it's completely shadowed.
Yes.
And then, of course, as you can imagine, the light spills out, so you get the penumbra. And that's where you would get just the partial eclipse.
And that's what we'll see here in Louisville. It's the penumbra. If you want to get into the umbra, you'll want to go north of Scottsburg, Indiana. Scottsburg is good, but keep going and you'll have an even longer time in totality there. Speaking of it, there you go. The point of greatest eclipse where it'll be the longest duration, actually down in Mexico, whereas it was in Hopkinsville, the last eclipse back in 2017. So that's a bit different. But nonetheless, we've got some of our counties involved.
Comes across 13 states.
Yeah.
So this is a big eclipse, meaning a lot of people in its path. As it makes its way closer to us, you're going to see that, yes, part of our viewing area is in that path of the umbra, the 100% eclipse. And that's really where you want to be. I mean, Louisville might be 50 miles south, but it's nothing like being in the total eclipse. So if you could get up there, that's the place to be. We're going to be like, what, 98, 99?
99.2 is what we're going with here.
Yeah.
The county is so big, it changes even amongst the county here.
And there you see the duration of the eclipse. And some people want to be very close to that center line in the longest duration because you would get to soak it in for just a little bit longer, right?
Right. So you want to go north toward that red line there. By the way, if you're on your phone and you're watching us, you can take screenshots of these graphics and save them to your camera roll if you want to reference them later. And you do that by, if you're on an iPhone, just pressing the power button and the up button at the same time there. So it makes it easy to save this, but you'll see the durations. But when does this happen, Kevin?
Yeah, and also just to point out that from Scottsburg to Seymour is quite a difference. I mean, less than a minute to over 3 minutes. So try to get somewhere where you're going to be in it for a minute, so to speak, because we could have some clouds around. I'm going to get to the forecast in a second. But as Ryan mentioned, what about the time of that totality? Again, if you're talking about a 3-minute window, it's going to be somewhere close to just after 3 o'clock for everybody. And you can see those times here. So in Seymour, for instance, 3:06 to 3:09. Big difference between being in 100% totality and, say, Louisville, where Yeah, we're going to wind up seeing some sun at 99.2%.
And look how it changes. You go all the way down to Columbia, and it's 95.1%. What is the difference between the 95.1 and the 99.2? Not a whole lot. It would just be slightly dimmer here in Louisville than it would be in Columbia. But once you cross into that totality area up near Scottsburg, boy, that is where you get the corona, the Bailey beads, the diamond effect. You really feel that temperature go down. You feel not only that, but the wind changes direction. You see the total darkness. We will not see total darkness here in Louisville.
Everybody will notice a difference, but you're really going to be noticing the difference in that 100% eclipse. So let's talk about the forecast. We obviously have a weather system that's going to be moving through over the weekend. That brings clouds.
That's Sunday.
Yep. I want you to notice the time on this. This is 2:27 in the afternoon. We're going to show that as this eclipse comes up from Mexico, moves across Texas, Arkansas, southern Illinois, a lot of the computer guidance showing cloudy skies even through that path.
Right.
Now, will you notice it if there's cloudy skies? Yeah, you're going to notice it, but will you be able to see those brilliant effects? The Bailey speeds, the diamond effect as it sort of pops out when it covers it. No, you won't be able to see that. So you really,
if it's cloudy,
you really want to hope for clear sky, or at least at best, if you have to have clouds, the high, thin clouds.
Right. And here's the deal. We're going to be saddled between these two weather systems. You got one moving through with showers on Sunday. Monday is kind of the gap day until we get into more of a stormy pattern next week. So the question is, will we have a clear enough sky on that Monday? The computer models we use are still squabbling about this, but it does seem as if a good chunk of the eclipse path could be cloudy. And Kevin, the ironic thing that Brian and I were talking about today is a lot of folks are flying down to Del Rio, Texas, because that statistically is the area that this time of year has the least amount of cloud cover. The ironic part is this next storm system could make them completely cloudy, and all these folks who have spent thousands of dollars to get to Del Rio, Texas, are going to be staring at the clouds potentially. Not set in stone yet, but something to consider here, that we are in kind of an atypical pattern across the country.
They're the ones that'll be getting eclipsed themselves. Right?
Oh, there we go. Get some Tex-Mex there in Del Rio. I've been to Del Rio. It's a nice place.
It's not that
dry.
nice.
It's dry.
Yes,
It's dry. I mean, they're nice people down there.
Okay, well, that's
Try not to disparage Del Rio, Texas on the internet here.
like I've chased in Del Rio too. There's not a lot down in Del Rio, Texas.
They have good food.
Yeah, nice people, good food. What more do you need? You see, the fact that here's the deal on the forecast. Some people are asking for it. We really don't know why. Not because we're too far in advance of it, but because there is going to be a weather system nearby that is impossible to pin down without that better data. So that's what we need to know. Will we see a gap in the cloud cover? It's sort of like pinpointing snow or even severe weather. We never know that days in advance with precision. Much like this, if it looked like we weren't going to have a weather system around, which we sort of have an idea that we are going to have one because one's going to be moving through on Sunday. How fast is it going to be? Will the edge of the clouds be in Illinois, or will it be down in Arkansas? Will it be past us? That's the part we still have to work with, and we just don't have that answer yet.
And the question is to when will the higher resolution cloud cover data come in? Whoa, where's that audio coming from?
That sounds like Kendrick.
Oh, that's the Path 5 IFB. There we go. That was coming from our master control room. You folks at home did not hear it, but we heard it in our ears and we went, what is that? Anyway, the answer to the question of live stream here, when will that high resolution cloud cover data come in? It actually starts tomorrow night with the high resolution European model, where it has an hourly sort of increment to things. And that's when you'll see our weather graphics start to kick in with actually clouds moving with that eclipse penumbra and umbra moving across the country there. So we'll keep you apprised on that.
All right, let's talk total time and durations, or totality time and durations. Jasper, Indiana. Again, all of these are going to be just after 3 p.m. So any place we were to put on this map close to us and in the path of totality, just after 3 o'clock, the durations slightly higher up around Jasper, French Lick just a little bit less, and you get to Scottsburg and it's under a minute for that duration. Now, we talk about in Seymour because much of our team, Brian and I, are going to be in Seymour, and that partial eclipse will begin at 1:49. So that's when that eclipse begins to take place. And then, boom, it hits totality. And that's going to happen at that 3:06 to 3:09 time frame. Everything's dark. Birds start chirping, might fall asleep, whatever happens in your backyard. You'll notice that we come out of that eclipse slowly. So from 3:09 until 4:23, that's when the partial eclipse stays and eventually fades.
And then here in Louisville, where I am going to be with Carson Meredith here, the eclipse partially begins at 1:49 p.m. We reach our maximum point at 99.2%. There's not going to be a magic moment where it's like, oh, it's totally dark here in Louisville. It will just kind of gradually get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer until about 3:07 p.m. And then we start to get lighter again in that partial eclipse where nothing, or I should say where you've got just a little sliver of the sun being blocked by the moon. That ends at 4:22 p.m. So the partial eclipse timeline is pretty long, from 1:49 to 4:22, but it's really closer to that 3:07 when you'll really start to notice the dimness here in Louisville.
Here's the good part about it. If it's cloudy and you're like, man, I was going to go somewhere, but now I'm just going to have to watch it on TV, we're going to be live. So we'll be showing it, not just from the locations where we are, and we'll be at a number of places across southern Indiana, but because we're part of a large television group, we have 113 stations. Many of them are in the path of the eclipse. So we're going to be showing you what's going on from their vantage points as well. So tune in Monday, April 8th from 2 to 4. We'll be hosting the Great American Eclipse. What does it look like in a 3D view? Well, let's take a look. We'll go back down to Mexico, where you can see as we come across the Texas border, the eclipse begins. We take you through Waco, parts of Dallas in the total eclipse. This one covers some large population.
Yeah, and because of that, there's also a lot of folks going down to these cities. So there's going to be kind of a swelling of the population in those places. This goes all the way through Missouri, and then we start to get closer to wave country here. We're on the Illinois-Missouri line right now. And you see Paducah is just barely in it, but they're in it. So is Evansville. And then by the time we get to about 3:04 p.m., that's when our very western counties start to get into this.
And I'll tell you, Bloomington, Indianapolis, talk about capitalizing on an eclipse.
Boy.
They've got big things. William Shatner's going to be there. They've got large concerts planned.
Dr. Mae Jemison's going to be at the stadium too with William Shatner at IU. That's crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah, Purdue has set up with NASA at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So they're doing a big thing there in Indianapolis. This is where it crosses into our viewing area. Notice Louisville, no, not in it, but it gets closer to us by the time you hit Scottsburg, pushing up into Seymour, over toward French Lick, and then we continue to move off to the north and east. You get Fort Wayne, Dayton, Ohio is in it, goes across Cleveland, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario before it gradually moves through Maine and moves out of the country.
It's so funny how this map, when you see the cities go by, a lot of these are our affiliate gray television stations that we'll be seeing you the live feeds from during our eclipse coverage between 2 and 4 p.m. on Monday here. So it just so happens to work out that the power of gray television and this eclipse are matched up for this. So this is the place to see the eclipse is Wave if you're going to be inside watching some of that eclipse coverage before you kind of peek out side and see it yourself.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We're getting close. Obviously, we're going to be giving better and fine-tuned updates on the cloud cover and the expected cloud cover around the area, starting tonight at 11, but throughout the day tomorrow as we hit through the weekend. And then let's just keep our fingers crossed that we have a little bit of break in the cloud cover. That would be nice. Let's jump to some questions.
Yep. I do want to talk about one more thing first.
Oh, yeah.
Eclipse glasses.
You mentioned this.
Because we've got a whole lot of folks saying, like, where do I get eclipse glasses? Which eclipse glasses are good? What are not? You want to have eclipse glasses, first of all. You don't want to try to use like a welder's helmet or 2 pairs of sunglasses. That is super, super dangerous. But you also want to have the right eclipse glasses when you have them. Our friends at NBC put together a piece about fake eclipse glasses and how
they're
those
out there
are a major problem, especially if you try to buy them off the internet.
And capturing the attention of people around the world, and the scammers know it. Unfortunately, some are already creating and selling products that could actually create big health implications for you and your eyesight. It's something that's already on the radar at the Better Business Bureau, working to track these scams.
The scams range from different things such as your glasses, just knowing which glasses are safe.
Here's Melanie Ducanel with the Better Business Bureau in southeastern Michigan.
You can print anything on paper these days, so verifying how good these glasses are and who you're buying them from is really important.
Already, we've seen scammers selling items that are not approved to help you view the solar eclipse safely. Henry Ford Health ophthalmologist Dr. Kumar says he's very concerned about the products that are being sold right now that are not tested, that are not legit. Here's what you need to look for.
You want it to have that ISO 12312-2. That's been tested and that we know is safe.
And don't think that your everyday sunglasses will work, that they're safe, that they'll give you the protection that you need. They won't.
It's not going to cut it. It does not have the proper amount of protection to correctly and properly filter out the most harmful rays that come from direct observation of the sun.
So that 12312 number, that ISO 12312 number is super important. Check your eclipse glasses before Monday, just to make sure that you unfortunately didn't buy a scam pair online.
Yeah.
That can happen, and that would be a terrible time to find out on Monday morning that you've got one of those.
Let's jump to some questions. A lot of folks have been in here watching us talk about the storm damage, the surveys, the 74 event, the eclipse. We've covered a lot tonight. So what do we have?
Yeah, Philip is asking, love the interview with Tom Wills. Just wondering, how important is the data from past years when it comes to forecasting the weather?
Yeah, super important. We get a lot of information. And again, it goes back to even the map from Dr. Fujita. Being able to plot those, know that there are multiple vortices. This is just one thing. So the research that goes into it, the equipment that goes into it, now we can look at the correlation coefficient. That gives us an idea on the radar view that says, okay, hey, there's something in this beam back to the imagery that doesn't fit. So when the way the radar works, it's on the ground, it scans out as it rotates, and it sends out the frequency, hits the image, whether that's going to be a raindrop, a snowflake, the frequency comes back to the radar, and then it colors in on the map. So what happens in the correlation coefficient is that there's something that shouldn't be there. It's a different frequency than what would typically be there, like rain or snow or precipitation. And it gives us that darker color in the way that we have it set up.
Yeah.
And that simply says that, hey, there's a foreign object here. Oftentimes, that's an indicator that if everything else coincides, like the velocity couplet, the reflectivity, that would be an indicator that maybe we have lifted debris into the radar scan.
Yeah, that dual pole technology coming out around 2009, 2010, and has just revolutionized how we do our tornado warning coverage around here. Dovetailing off of that, Brandon says, the Henry County tornado was so close to me. I live in Bethlehem. I watched the kids trampoline in the wind trying to twist it, but thankfully it didn't get damaged. That could be the state bird of Kentucky during a big thunderstorm, the trampoline. No good,
I like
right?
that.
Let's see. Cloverport didn't get much yesterday, according to Jason, just some heavy rain and wind. Not everybody saw severe weather yesterday, but if you did, it was a bad day, unfortunately, for you here.
Yeah, and I tell you, we never know that. I mean, our team, we always put a plan into place, and we have different levels of our plan. But this one was, we knew early on that this could be an all-hands-on-deck day. I think I was here 30 hours minus a trip to go home and take a shower.
We had to tell Kevin to go home because
we were
take a rest.
We were all here. That was the thing. It wasn't just me. I mean, we split our shifts up that way. It's just the way it works when there's severe weather late at night, early in the morning, and then again in the afternoon. So
what do you do at that point? So thankfully you had time to rest a little bit between those two, sides of the storms there. But my goodness, it was a lot.
It's just one of those days where, we know that the power of it, and we have to have a plan to make sure we have it covered here, both in all of the ways that we do it now. In 1974, it was radio and television. Now it's many other places. Luckily, we can sort of disseminate that from one location.
Laura Adams, our friend there. Hi, guys. Makes you wonder what kind of upcoming severe weather season we have ahead.
Well, we're in it.
I know. We're in the depths of it here. We were
Yeah.
kind of talking about this today. Once you
Yeah.
get stuck in one of these patterns where you get hit by these systems, it's hard to get out of it.
It sure is.
And
Next
worried
week,
about
next
that.
week holds a chance for some stronger storms
It does.
later in the week. So we'll see how that works out. So I would look at every 5th to 6th day. That's usually the repetition that we get in.
Leah says, I heard someone today downplaying the stuff that happened yesterday, and I was so annoyed.
Well, they didn't get hit, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
They're the ones that would be complaining there wasn't enough if they had gotten hit, and we all know them.
Norman Powell, longtime follower, a group, including myself, listened to Dick Gilbert's helicopter broadcast of the Louisville tornado in Milton at a gas station. Yeah.
I was just looking at that footage a week or two ago, and he was flying for a WHAS radio at the time, and really saved a lot of lives. That helicopter pilot just was able to follow the edge of that storm, and just saw it coming across Jefferson County, and gave a play-by-play so people could really hear the message and take shelter or get out of the way.
That had to have been one of the first times in the United States that that's happened, where you've had a helicopter kind of tracking a tornado. They do it in Oklahoma all the time now with all the TV stations out there, but
it's
that was
especially
groundbreaking.
Especially tough around here because most of our tornadoes don't come from supercells around here. They would come along a line, and you can't fly in that because you have to be able to be on the outer edge of the cell or you can escape it. So supercells are much easier to track from the air than what would be the typical way we would get tornadoes along a line.
And even when you have supercells, sometimes they're rain wrapped too, the tornadoes. So it's tough to see them. Donnie says, I wonder how many tornadoes actually happened that day back in 1974. Because of less populated areas, a bunch of them probably went uncounted. And I would say that's true. Absolutely. We can't see everything. Even today, sometimes that can happen in super rural spots there. Michael Craven says, hello, you fellers. Thanks for keeping us up to date and safe yesterday. Thank you for watching and trusting us. We appreciate that. Tom Wells, student. Todd Wells says, Tom Wells was my meteorology professor, excellent teacher and statesman. Thank you for that interview. He says.
Tom, his wife, Pam, she's a calculus teacher. So in some downtime here, when I started here, we had some downtime. now there's not as
downtime.
Much. But I would sit, we'd sit back, and Tom was always a puzzle guy. He'd be working puzzles. We'd be, his wife would be preparing. Tom would be preparing for exams for his students because he was a teacher for 40 years too at U of L. So in addition to working here, he was teaching at U of L. But I would take his quizzes and work calculus problems. His wife. So I felt like a student too, even though I technically wasn't a student of his. So it's kind of fun to do.
Rose McCubbins is asking who will be at the station during the eclipse that day. So she's asking kind of about our plan. What is our plan?
Yeah, so our plan, and this is no secret, Brian and I are going to Seymour. We'll anchor our coverage from there. Now, we have several plans. This will be one of them. And if there's weather, there's another plan. If there's severe weather or it's an alert day, it's a whole different plan. But right now, we're banking on decent weather. So Brian and I will be in Seymour, anchoring our coverage from there. We have a crew that will be in French Lick with their eyes to the sky there. We have another crew, and they haven't been placed yet, but we have two more crews. One will be down, I think, at the Science Center.
Yep.
Another one out at Iroquois Park.
Yep.
And then maybe Scottsburg, Indiana, I think. So we got like 6 crews dedicated to the eclipse that day. Who's going to be at the station in the weather realm is going to be Ryan, me, and Carson.
Yep. So we'll get to peek outside when this happens, which is kind of fun here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Chris.
Because, by the way, I should mention that the weather doesn't stop. So we still have to keep the weather enterprise.
That's why I'm running here, by the way. Yes.
Yeah. So Ryan and Carson will be in charge of making sure we get an accurate forecast on the air that day, while Brian and I really have fun with the eclipse.
And see, the problem is, and this brings up another good point, you saying that, Kevin and Brian may not be able to make it back to the station in time for almost any of our newscasts. That's why Carson and I are here holding the fort.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we won't make it back.
It's the traffic, though, because everybody's going to leave like the Seymour and Scottsburg area at the same moment that the eclipse ends.
Well, we ran into that in 2017, the eclipse. We were in Hopkinsville at that time, and we had stayed down there for days, and we all decided, just like everybody else in the town, left at the same time. And what should have been like a 3-4 hour drive, I guess, I remember driving through the side roads, and I know Kentucky pretty well. And I came up and I thought, you know what, I'm going to cut up through Grayson County, and I like one eye open, and I thought, you know what, this isn't safe. I mean, by this point, it's like midnight. I had already been on the road like 8 hours and was still about an hour and a half from Louisville. And I thought, you know what, I've got to spend the night. And I pulled into the lodge at Rough River.
Oh, yeah.
And it was packed. They were full. So I was like,
everybody else had the same idea.
So I rolled the windows down, coming from a trucking family. My grandfather owned a truck.
Yep.
Rolled the windows down, took it slow, deep breaths in, made it back, but I was exhausted. So you're right. The travel was a nightmare.
And so that's why our plan includes some folks back here at the station, too. Chris on YouTube is asking, I read the state of Indiana was put under a blanket tornado warning back in 1974. Only time in history an entire state was put under a warning. Supposedly warnings used to be hand-drawn and typed down on a typewriter. I mean, that was the day and time that we were in.
Interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I'll say that I did know that the warnings were hand-drawn. And in fact, drawing some warnings up the other night, I don't know if you know this because it was in the middle of the night. I got my days mixed up. Today's Wednesday. So Monday night, when the storms were breaking out across parts of Missouri, Arkansas, the nationwide radar system from the Weather Service went down.
It was a bad deal. It was like 6:30 in the morning.
No radar imagery.
Yeah.
So you could imagine no warnings coming out. I mean, this was a problem for everybody. So the TV stations in the path of these storms, namely in our station group, KMOV in St. Louis, and my buddy and other Purdue grad, Steve Templeton, was on the air. And they didn't know the warnings. Finally, another office took over and started issuing the warnings, but they were having to draw the warnings up and send them out. Even in our Weather Service office here, we were down through the morning hours. They were sending screenshots, pictures of the sort of discussions and the things that the products that they typically send.
Isn't that wild?
It was crazy.
To 2024, where we are so dependent on this stuff that when it breaks, that's not good news. And that's the federal government.
I can't believe it could break. That was the thing. Boy, it really opened our eyes to like, whoa.
You always find in severe weather where your weakest points in technology are, where things are going to break because they're so stressed. Everybody's using them. They're running on all cylinders.
I still haven't heard what happened. I do want to follow up on
haven't
that.
Either.
But the fact is, that can't happen. Like, that's a problem.
Yeah, that was the worst day for that to happen, too. Let's see. Are these cloud models that we were showing for, of course, the eclipse a little too early, or can we expect something like this? We're a little early.
It's a little early. Typically in long-range modeling, we get a good idea of the trends. We see the ups and downs, but determining exact placement of clouds or precipitation can be very tough far in advance. Now, some would argue, well, we're not that far in advance. We're 4 days away. And you're right. But the problem is we have a system moving in, and we really need to see some better data on that before we can narrow it down. So hopefully by late tonight and tomorrow, we can start to speak with a little more confidence on that cloud cover. If I had to say now, I'd say we have a decent chance for clouds. But there is a chance for some clearing during that time in the afternoon. The chance for clouds looks to be greater than the chance for clearing. And we'll just see which one gets, either we're going to close the cloud gap and it's going to be cloudy, or we're going to start to widen that clearing and it has a better chance of being at least partly sunny.
This is a climatologically cloudy time of year around here, too. That also counts against us, unfortunately. John Michael Bassett brings up a good point. On the solar eclipse glasses, some of the fakes also have that ISO number, that 12312 number listed on them. So Scientific American, he gives a link here, gives a good piece on how to test them. Not a bad idea, just to make sure, especially if you purchase them online, to make sure you got the right thing. Again, it's a bad day if you find out your eclipse glasses are bad on the eclipse day on Monday here.
I saw some folks asking, why aren't we doing eclipse glasses again this year? We did them in 2017. Climatology is against us this year with the clouds. The fact is we would have to team up to be able to disseminate them. What we found the last time we did it, it worked well because we did it at the state fair. So we had people that could come and do it. But if at the TV station, we couldn't really give them out from here. So we decided to, we have them for our staff, and we'll take some with us to our locations that we go to, but we weren't able to give them out to the entire public.
Last question here from Zach on YouTube. When do you all think we will have another total eclipse in our area? And again, we will be dead, unfortunately.
Long dead.
Like 21 something is when that'll happen. There is one you could travel to, as Scott appropriately puts on here, in 2045. I forget exactly where that is, but it's within driving distance of our area if you want to see that. Then I will be like 54 years old when that happens. My goodness, that's a long time from now. 2045.
I didn't want to think about it.
Like, that's like we'll be having flying cars, the Jetsons, and
I hope that's where my nursing home is. That's probably where I'm going to be.
Eclipse. I think that one actually does go through Florida, ironically, now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, that's where I would want my nursing home.
That's where so many people retire to. So I was just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
All right. We're just after 9 o'clock. Goodness, we've been on here almost an hour. Where'd that go? We'll jump on at 11 o'clock with the latest. Obviously, we have another set of data that comes in tonight. We'll certainly keep you updated on the eclipse. I'll give you a quick peek to the 10-day. This is going to be the same one you saw earlier. There it is.
Didn't you like my rendition?
Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to get the audio punched up.
I've been having to listen to that for the last 6 to 8
Yes.
months, by the way, as I've been putting all these graphics together. So it's burned into my head.
So there you see it. We do warm back into the 70s at least. So that's the good part of the 10-day forecast. And with that will come another cold front late in the week. That gives us that thunderstorm chance on next Thursday.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on that one. We'll see how that goes.
All right. We appreciate everybody jumping in. Thanks. Appreciate you watching through our storm coverage yesterday. Always a pleasure of ours to be able to be here and be with you, both on the digital spectrum here and certainly on the air when we're on with newscast or storm coverage. So we appreciate you trusting Wave, and we hope you have a great night.
We'll see you later, guys. Bye.